The room felt unfamiliar that night, not because I had never seen it before, but because everything inside it suddenly felt different. The bed, the walls, the silence, even the air felt heavier. I remember sitting near the edge of the mattress, trying to keep my breathing steady. Slow breaths, quiet breaths. Like if I stayed calm enough, maybe the feeling inside me would disappear. But it didn't. It stayed there. That quiet feeling that something important was happening, and I didn't fully understand it. I didn't understand it then. But that was the first moment I realized how dangerous silence can feel when you're young. The lamp beside the bed gave off a soft yellow glow. Not bright enough to feel comforting, just enough to make everything visible. And somehow, that made things worse. Because nothing was hidden. And still, nothing made sense. I kept rubbing my hands together without realizing it.
Small nervous movements, the kind people make when they're trying to hold themselves together quietly. He sat beside me carefully, slowly, not confident either. That surprised me. I think part of me expected him to understand everything automatically, but he looked uncertain too, and suddenly, the room felt even smaller, because now there were two confused people, pretending not to be confused. At the time, I told myself this was normal, that everyone probably feels uncertain at first, that maybe marriage simply feels strange in the beginning. But deep inside, something resisted that explanation, because confusion is one thing. Feeling emotionally unprepared is something else entirely, and nobody had prepared me emotionally. That's the part nobody explained, not the responsibilities, not the expectations, the emotional reality of it. Nobody explained how strange it feels when everyone expects you to understand something, before you actually do. That realization sat quietly inside me the entire night, heavy, persistent, and the silence inside the room only made it stronger. We barely spoke, just small words, simple things. The kind people say when they don't know what else to say. But every time the conversation stopped, the silence returned immediately, stronger than before. I became aware of every tiny sound, the shifting of blankets, the wind touching the window, my own breathing. Even my heartbeat felt loud. That's when something started to feel off, not dramatically, quietly, like a realization slowly trying to form somewhere deep inside me. I didn't know what was expected from me emotionally. And worse, I didn't know if I was already supposed to know. That feeling changes a person, because once you believe everyone else understands something except you stop trusting your own reactions. You become careful, smaller, quieter. That's exactly what happened to me, looking back now. I think that was the first night I learned how silence can shape people emotionally, especially young people, especially people raised to avoid difficult questions, because silence doesn't remove confusion, it hides it, and hidden confusion slowly turns into shame. I didn't understand it then, but I had already started blaming myself for not understanding something nobody had clearly explained. That's what stayed with me the longest. Not the night itself, the feeling that I was somehow failing at being normal. The next morning confused me even more. Everything looked ordinary again. Breakfast was prepared. People smiled. Conversations continued normally. Nobody acted like anything important had happened. And meanwhile, inside me, something still felt unsettled. That was the beginning of the split. The difference between appearance and reality. Between what people show and what they quietly carry inside themselves. Days passed, then weeks, but the feeling stayed, quiet, constant, like a question waiting somewhere in the background of my mind. And once a question stays long enough, it changes the way you see everything around you. I started noticing things I had ignored before. The way older women avoided certain conversations, the way difficult subjects disappeared quickly, the way silence filled spaces where honesty should have existed. That's when something started to feel off again. Not just about marriage, about the entire system surrounding it, because I slowly realized something important. People weren't silent because they fully understood. They were silent because they had learned not to ask questions. That realization changed everything for me. One afternoon, I was helping another young woman hang laundry outside. Her name was Rebecca. We weren't talking about anything serious, just normal conversation, simple things. And then suddenly, without even looking at me, she said quietly, "My first night felt confusing too." That was all she said. No details, no explanation. But those words stayed with me for years, because in that moment, I realized I wasn't alone, and strangely, that realization didn't comfort me. It made everything heavier. Because now it wasn't just confusion anymore. It was pattern. Something repeated. Something shared. Something quietly carried by many women. We didn't continue talking about it afterward. We didn't need to, because we both understood exactly what the other meant. That realization followed me home that night. I remember laying awake, staring into the darkness, thinking about how many people probably carried the same confusion silently, how many convinced themselves discomfort was normal, how many accepted emotional uncertainty because everyone around them treated it like ordinary life. Night after night, those thoughts stayed with me, and every morning, everything continued normally again. That was the hardest part, the normalness of it all, because when emotional discomfort becomes ordinary, people stop questioning it. At the time, I told myself this was normal, but slowly, I stopped believing that, because healthy things usually become clearer with time. This never fully did, and that realization frightened me, not because I suddenly understood everything, but because I realized how emotionally unprepared we truly were, not weak, not broken, simply unprepared for expectations nobody honestly explained. That difference matters deeply. I didn't understand it then, but silence shapes people long before they realize it's happening. It teaches you which feelings should stay hidden, which questions feel dangerous, which discomforts you're expected to carry quietly. And once you grow up inside that silence, you stop recognizing confusion as something deserving answers. You start treating it like personal failure instead. That understanding took years. Years of slowly learning words I didn't have when I was younger. Pressure, expectation, emotional suppression, isolation, things I had experienced deeply without ever knowing how to describe them. And once you finally have words for something, you begin seeing your past differently. Looking back now, I don't think the hardest part was the night itself. I think the hardest part was believing my confusion meant something was wrong with me, when really, I had simply never been emotionally prepared, honestly. There's a huge difference between those things, and nobody explained that difference before marriage. I still think about that night sometimes, not because of what happened, but because of how alone I felt while pretending everything was fine. Because of how badly I wanted someone to simply explain things honestly. Some things stay with you, not as sharp memories, but as feelings your body remembers long before your mind fully understands them. And maybe that's the part nobody talks about, not the event itself, but the silence surrounding it, the expectation that young people should understand emotional experiences without emotional guidance. If you grew up in a place where silence was treated like maturity, where difficult questions felt dangerous, where confusion had to stay hidden, I understand you, because I know what it feels like to learn something important too late. And maybe, speaking honestly about it now, is the first real explanation I was ever given.